Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Christy Wallace and Maricela Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Christy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricela Herrera. Happy 2020, Maricela.
Happy 2020.
So I know you did something huge on New Year's, something fun and exciting and meaningful in many ways. You want to share with our community what that was?
Sure. So I couldn't go home this year to El Salvador, which was bittersweet.
More bitter than sweet.
Yeah, more bitter than sweet. But I decided to make the most out of it and signed up to do the midnight race in Central Park. So it's a 4-mile run. There were like 5,000 people running it. It was started at the stroke of midnight and everyone was wearing like hats with lights on them and sequined tutus, and It was just a lot of fun. It was really, really fun way to start the year.
And you did that race with someone you met through Ellevate, right?
I did. I did that race with my friend Liesel, who we met when she used to be one of our chapter leaders in LA and moved to New York. And now we're really good friends. That was 7 years ago. It's crazy.
Our guest today, Kate McGuinness, talks a lot about confidence lost, confidence found, and how to reclaim the unstoppable you. And I think, my interpretation of the race on New Year's and a lot of what you've done this year and the past couple months is really like owning who you are and going after those goals and those opportunities that you know you can achieve. And I'm really excited about that.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about confidence, and I know we've talked a lot about confidence lately here too. For me, it's been kind of eye-opening, I would say, the last 2 years, how my own confidence went from very, very little to much greater. And a lot of it due to either people I surround myself with and seeing things with kind of a different mentality and just owning unapologetically what I want and how I want it. And I don't know, it's a change of mindset. It's kind of crazy.
But it's a powerful one and an important one and something we think about here at Ellevate all the time, but particularly in January.
Yeah.
Because it's usually in January where we see a huge insurgence of new members, of traffic, of questions, of engagement in our community who are starting this year fresh and wanting to own their success, own their career, own their life, and achieve what they know is possible, and know that having a community to tap into, just like you tapped into Liesel and ran that race together, is a key part of accomplishing those goals. So we have a special promo in January.
Yep.
You want to share some about that?
Yeah, so like you said, January is a big month for us, and I know you said you're over resolutions this year. But it is true that people come into a new year with kind of those intentions and drive to create a change in their lives. We know nobody who's done something great has done it alone, and you really never have all the answers, but you have to have the people that you can connect with, who you can ask, who can help, who can open those doors. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for people, especially when they are at that moment of looking for that support network or for those to be able to join that. And we have an amazing community of women at Ellevate. So if you're looking for support to reach your goals, you should join. We are doing a 20% off membership discount with the code Own Your Story through January.
Own your story.
Time to own it.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to my interview with Kate. Kate, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
I'm delighted to be here.
I wanted to start by delving a little bit into your background. We know our community is always inspired by other stories and career paths. It's not linear anymore. And the more we hear from others, I think the more options and possibilities seem to take shape before our eyes. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners, how did you get to where you are today?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it has been a long and winding road, as the Beatles said. I started off a very eager law student, graduated and went to a terrific law firm and spent 20 years there, 10 of them as a partner, and was recruited away to become the general counsel of a Fortune 200, which felt wonderful. It certainly built up my ego and affirmed my identity as I was a very successful woman lawyer. Boy, that meant a lot to me. And unfortunately, that was soon to end. I was quite abruptly fired without any sense that my performance had been lacking. But when you're the general counsel, unfortunately, you have to be a naysayer. And maybe I was a naysayer a little too often. So I was abruptly fired and eventually got a very nice severance. And that encouraged me to take a look at my life. I had a son that I'd longed for a long time. So I decided to spend some time with him. And I wrote a novel, Terminal Ambition, which was intended to, and I hope did, educate women about what their workplace rights were to be free of sexual harassment and discrimination. And then everything was quite comfortable. I had somewhat mostly gotten over the pain to my ego of being fired, living this comfortable existence on a ranch in California wine country. All was well until the company that was paying me severance in annual installments went bankrupt. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, boy, there was a real turnaround. So while getting fired had definitely dimmed my confidence, and all of a sudden losing the money and needing to sell my ranch, really that was a double hit. So it's really been a long road back to finding confidence, but I've really come to find what I think of as authentic confidence or sustainable confidence. It's not based on the approval of others or having all these gold stars that we collect over our lives. And it's now coming from within. It's a much more comfortable place to be.
How do you even identify or separate the confidence that comes through others, validation or view of you, or the confidence that comes from within? Does it feel different?
Oh, it absolutely does. There are so many things that I am comfortable doing now that I wouldn't have been in the past. As a lawyer, I did a lot of negotiation, and I was a real hard-nosed lawyer. So there were a lot of assertiveness skills in that forum. But turning around and doing that on a personal level, well, that was kind of uncomfortable. And so this new confidence that I've found lets me be assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. So I've come to recognize and accept that my views and thoughts matter, and hopefully the person I'm dealing with accepts that. But if they don't, I'm still fine. And it's the knowing that you're fine is what I think of as confidence. Most psychologists, I think, would agree that confidence is believing that what you set out to do in life will generally be accomplished. Not always, but this sense that, yes, I can accomplish what I want.
What if you can't accomplish what you want on your own? If it relies on others or other situations or opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's often how life works. We set out with a goal and we aren't able to accomplish it. And one of the wonderful ways of thinking about that. I think a key word is yet. So you have not accomplished that goal yet. That doesn't mean you will never accomplish it. And that's really kind of a nutshell synthesis of a very important concept promulgated by Carol Dweck, who's a psychology professor at Stanford. And her concept is a growth mindset, which is confidence in our abilities and the sense that with effort, we'll be able to achieve what we want. But effort is sometimes necessary and sometimes a whole lot of effort.
Absolutely. Do you believe that people are born with confidence, or can we create it from a space that maybe wasn't there before?
Well, that's interesting. It's certainly in terms of a mother, as being a mother, I'm now a mother of a 30-year-old, but thinking about how we treat our children, and are they confident until some adult impacts how they feel about themselves. And one one behavior that really erodes confidence is perfectionism. And the consensus of most psychologists is that perfectionism arises out of a desire to please, out of a desire to get approval. And in fact, many of them trace it back to when you're 8 years old. Somehow that mindset gets fixed. And at 8, most of us need the approval of the people around us to survive, to give us food, to give us shelter. And so we become quite adept at seeking the approval of others. And the problem is when we transform that process of seeking approval, what does it take? If we overdo it, if we try to become perfect, that's when we run into problems.
I know in your book you talk a lot about, that mindfulness and how to become aware and how to really, reclaim the unstoppable you, as you say. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned?
Well, you've hit on a very important one, which is mindfulness. So being aware of what's going on, whether it's, as you pointed out, the different situations in which you feel less confident. And when we become aware of our behaviors, that's the primary tool, the basis for being able to change them. So perhaps in an environment when you're getting dressed to go out and your husband says to you, "Oh, it looks like you've put on weight." I actually had that experience.
My husband wouldn't dare.
Well, and I should confess, that man is no longer my husband. But sometimes how we feel is very much influenced by our environment. So if you can gradually build that awareness of, oh, wait a minute, when I'm doing a lot of reading of Vogue or Elle, and I'm looking at all of these beautiful photoshopped women, how does that impact my confidence? If I become aware of that environment, maybe sometimes the environment is being around your family. Maybe that comes up for folks. Often it does over the holidays. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden, you just don't feel so comfortable in your own skin when you're around folks who've perhaps been hard on you in the past.
I do something which I believe many people, and particularly women, do, which is I hold on to the mistakes. I'm not holding on to the successes. It quickly moves past the success and maybe think about something else. But the mistakes, the losses, the things that didn't turn out the way I wanted them to, I can't let go of them. I mean, I'm still, 3 o'clock in the morning with insomnia.
Oh, yes.
That happened in high school. It's just, it's not healthy. But it's not, but it's how do you shift that mindset in celebrating those successes and using that to drive your confidence versus holding on to the things that were less successful and using that to bring you down.
Right. Well, you make a wonderful point. It reminds me of what Annie Lamott said, which is, my mind is a dangerous neighborhood and I try not to go there alone. And I mean, I think there are several things you can do to help that. One would be, when you look at the loss, the failure, the situation you're upset about, is if you can say to yourself, okay, that was not what I had in mind. If you can ask yourself, well, what lesson was there in that? What did I learn? And then the next step is to say, when the thought comes up again and again, to say, oh, okay, yes, that wasn't good, but I've learned a lesson from that. I'm ready to move on. Another approach for dealing with that rumination at 3 a.m. is, and of course this is coming from me as a lawyer, that you can make a contract with yourself and you say, all right, yes, I got to work this out, but I'll do that at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, or I'll do it at 4 o'clock tomorrow night. But basically, you have a contract. And for some people, knowing that, yes, I'm not trying to totally extinguish this concern, but I will deal with it later. And maybe not only do you contract with yourself to deal with it later, but you also, your contract may include a budget for time. All right, I'm going to think about this at 7 o'clock tomorrow night for 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if you're really lucky, 7 o'clock tomorrow night comes along and you've forgotten about it.
You talk about the power of mindfulness and then taking repeated actions. This formula, confidence formula, attention plus repeated action equals confidence. How do you personally do that? And what are ways that our listeners can take steps towards that? I was thinking it takes 21 days to make a habit. And, there's so many things in our lives we're trying to build in habits. But this sounds like a really important one that can help fuel many of our other hopes and dreams and goals we set for ourselves.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So there are two parts of the formula, and one is intention. And neuropsychologists have established that by setting the intention in our mind, so the intention is, I'm going to be more confident. That's the intention. If we set the intention in our mind, we in effect prime neural pathways. A lot of the basis of what I've written about is neuroscience and understanding the ability to create pathways in our brain. So that's where the intention comes in. There you've primed the pathway. And the repeated actions are basically creating or carving that neural pathway in our brain. So, for example, one might be if you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, oh my gosh, I've gotten so old, I've got these wrinkles, and every time you look in the mirror, you see those and talk to yourself about those wrinkles, you've deepened that path in your brain. But by repeated action, by changing that inner dialogue, and you look in the mirror and you say, wow, I've really got great cheekbones, or, oh, my eyes can look green depending on what I'm wearing. Or maybe you can't even come up with a physical compliment. And sometimes we can all be in that place. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you can think, I'm proud of what a kind person I am. I'm proud of the volunteer work that I do. So you've got to, through some repeated action, changing that script, you are going to change that neural pathway.
So you say something there that I wanted to follow up on around, the physical, confidence in the physical being versus your values or your traits versus your accomplishments, your skills, your abilities. Is it that siloed or bucketed in terms of the different aspects of ourselves that can help drive confidence, or is it really just tapping into the part of yourself that is most meaningful to you, be it skills, accomplishments, qualities, appearance?
Yeah, I think you've used a really good word in terms of siloed. I don't see it as being siloed. I think it's a whole person approach. And actually, in my book, once we establish the foundation of what are the tools, which are largely these neural pathways that we can use. All right, once I get the reader through that knowledge, the very first step of tools that I suggest readers use and apply to themselves are tools that will enhance the reader's authenticity, their sense of themselves. And it's by virtue of having a strong sense of yourself, which may be your achievements, it may be your appearance, but definitely what it includes is your values. And those values inform all parts of confidence.
Yeah. This is great. So, Kate, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is to think about the thing in my life that I have learned the most from. And as I think about that, the thing I've learned the most from actually was getting fired. So when you take that, which feels like, oh my gosh, what a terrible, painful thing, but with some perspective, I begin to see I have learned so much from that.
Yeah, that's great because, oftentimes in the moment, some of these hard situations, difficult, unexpected, seem like such a low, but when you look back at them and realize how far you've come and what you've learned from it, you understand how without the seemingly lows, we would not make it to the highs. And it's great to look at life in that way, that there's going to be ups and downs, but knowing that you're always moving upward, and however that manifests itself for you.
Yes, exactly. I think life is about growth and learning.
Yep. So, Kate, you are the first person that we are going to go through our lightning round with. Our first guest. This is something we wanted to start with the podcast. It's a great way to, learn a little bit more about you in kind of a fun way. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I just ask that you give me an answer in one sentence or less. And
okay.
I'm going to keep it fun. We do this at a lot of our events, actually, particularly when we have a panel, to kind of make it fun and interesting and make a deeper connection. So I'm going to get started. Kate, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert.
What is your favorite day of the week?
Sunday.
Ooh. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Who would be your dream dinner guest?
I'd say Michelle Obama.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you have a pet peeve?
Indiscriminate use of reply all.
Oh, this is good. What's your Monday morning staple? What do you have to have on Monday morning?
It would be steel-cut oats.
Mm-hmm. Your favorite recent read?
Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh, that's a great book. I highly recommend it. I loved it. Your top self-care practice?
Meditation.
And finally, what's one question you'd want to leave with our listeners? So one question for them to think about for themselves.
I would ask them to think about how they can be kind to themselves.
Excellent. Well, congrats on all of your success and on the book. I need to go and read your fictional book, right? It was a fictional crime thriller.
Oh, it is. It's a woman in a large law firm fighting sexual harassment and discrimination. So.
Yes. Fictional, but reads like reality.
Oh, yes.
I
A little bit too much, maybe.
It's my guilty pleasure. I love fictional crime novels. Absolutely love them. I blow through them. So I'll add it to my list.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.